A recap of what we've been talking about in the previous hour, and among issues we've been discussing on Daybreak this morning is the IEBC coming under siege. The IEBC has invited 4 presidential candidates who made it to the ballot for a consultative meeting next week. Among issues that will be discussed are concerns over the lack of a hard copy of registered voters. IEBC had previously said there will be no physical register of voters at polling stations. This in a bid to lock out ghost voters. IEBC saying all voters will be identified electronically through the KIMS. Also, in our discussions this morning was the IEBC's commission's publishing of the final voters register that shows regions that could be pivotal in the upcoming presidential election, counties in Mount Kenya region and the Rift Valley carrying the bulk of the voting population. And this appears to be a race that may end up being determined by the historical battlegrounds in the northern part of the country and parts of the South Rift. But is this in fact the case? My guests in studio this morning, we're joined by Advocate Joseph Kalende. He's joining us in this hour. Many thanks for being with us this morning. We're also this morning joined by Gloria Oroba. She's a public and policy analyst, and we're also joined, of course, by Alex Matere, who is a youth leader. Many thanks for joining us once again, gentlemen and lady. I'll start with you, Joseph, now that you've joined us this hour. We've been looking at the numbers of the 2022 race, looking at Rift Valley County having the highest numbers, looking at Central Kenya as well, Nairobi County as well, recording high numbers as regards registered voters. We're looking at historical battlegrounds and whether this will play out as a factor in this coming election. As we proceed with our conversation this morning, what are your thoughts around the numbers that we're seeing in our dailies today?
Yes, looking at the numbers, we realize that this time round, the battlegrounds have shifted. Because initially, we used to have, or historically, we used to have a presidential candidate from Central and one from the lower western part of the country. But this time round, we are having a presidential candidate from the Rift Valley, who is already enjoying massive support from Central. And the one on the other side is only enjoying the support from his traditional stronghold, which have already been breached. His strongholds have been breached. Because if you're looking at Western Kenya, and specifically looking at Western or the Mulembe Nation, the defenses of Raila Amolo Odinga have been breached. And the people who are backing him fully and helping him to get the votes and galvanize the support within Western region, they are already with his main competitor. So he will have a problem. And the next thing that will have a problem, bearing in mind with this traditional stronghold, is going to be about vote apathy, or how to get out the vote. How the two different presidential camps are going to get out the number will play a key factor in seeing that their strongholds, they have an added advantage from their stronghold. So those are the two factors that are going to play into this election. There's been a shift, according to Joseph. Do you agree?
I totally disagree. First, even if we talk about the Mulembe Nation, and by the sentiments of Joseph, he seems to have been the one who had authored the statement that was released by, the Kenya Kwanza principles from Mulembe Nation the other day, which is definitely misplaced. And it wasn't geared towards anything apart from self-interest. If you talk about the Mulembe Nation, Raila's support from the Mulembe Nation, which according to the figures contributes about 2.2 million votes, cannot be said to be because he goes through some leaders. I think it's directly linked to the people on the ground. It's directly from the Mulembe Nation people. And those Mulembe Nation people, they still remember that when Raila Amolo Odinga was a prime minister of this country, Wycliffe Oparanya was Minister for Planning. We had Musikari Kombo, local government. We had about 7 ministers from the Mulembe Nation. They still remember the kind of development that Raila Odinga managed to bring to Western Kenya. And therefore, it will be foolhardy for us to sit and start imagining that because Moses Wetangula and Musalia Mudavadi have joined Ruto on this other side, then there's going to be a major shift in terms of the voting pattern of the Mulembe Nation. Secondly, William Ruto has definitely been on record, Lillian, and you remember at some point he went to Western and he was really disillusioned, and he started saying that when it comes to Harambe, when it comes to social events, you invite me, we dance together, but when it comes to votes, you definitely don't vote for me. As Mulembe Nation, I know we are very magnanimous, we are very welcoming, we love peace and we love people. But when it comes to making critical decisions that affect the trajectory of the people of the Mulembe Nation, definitely they know that their support and their hopes and their destiny lie with no one else apart from Raila Odinga. And just to quantify, apart from all these other strongholds that you're talking about, because there is this illusion that Rift Valley is solid, right? That is what Kenya Kwanza people would want us to believe. But I'd want to remind them that Narok is in Rift Valley, that Samburu is in Rift Valley, that parts of Turkana, they're also in Rift Valley, that West Pokot is in Rift Valley, where they cannot say that those are their strongholds. These are areas that Raila Amolo Odinga enjoy some substantial support, and I think he might not be able to get anything lower than 40% in the general vote that is going to be voted in Rift Valley. But lastly, Lillian, about issues, and you have seen that Azimio Manifesto is talking about issues, and it's addressing those issues that are pertinent to the common mwananchi. When we are talking about single mothers, there are also single mothers in Rift Valley who will resonate with the message that Raila is pushing. When you're talking about devolution, that we want to increase 15% to 35% of the national share, there are people whose life has really been impacted by devolution, who will actually stand out and say, even if my community will vote in this direction, I as a person who has benefited from a hospital that has been constructed by the county government, if our share is going to be increased from 15 to 35%, and we'll have more money to ensure that we have equipment, that we have medicine, and we have personnel, I'm going to vote for Raila Odinga. That is one of the areas that they also need to consider that is going to tilt this election.
Gloria, Matera is saying the historical way of voting will still remain. But in your opinion, are we expecting a major shift? Just as we rope in Joseph into this conversation, Alex here is of the opinion that we are sticking to the old way of doing things, that there's no political agenda, or even the issues, the gender cards, the youth numbers, a decline in that will be at play in this election, that we are expecting the obvious.
Matera is saying a lot of things, most of them being propaganda. Like when you say Kisii is a stronghold of Raila, that is the same narrative they tried to push last time. And I was reminding him when we were on the break, they didn't even have one MP from ODM in Kisii. Their first MP came during the by-election that we had in November last year. And I can tell you even that was a struggle. So there are things that Matera is saying that, I mean, for instance, when he says that Raila Odinga will get 40% of Rift Valley, really, let us also be serious with what we are propagating here on studio. So what I'll say, first of all, is the idea of the issue-based politics is actually real. And for someone to say that we thought we were just aiming for the Mama Mboga and the people at the bottom, and we forgot that the technocrats. That is a clear understanding that he does not really relate to the bottom-up economic. The bottom-up economic approach does not mean that you are poor and have nothing. It means that instead of sitting in a boardroom as directors of the education sector, we are going to the teachers and the lecturers and the people at the bottom of that industry, and trying to find out what are the pain points, and then bringing them on board and saying, this is how we are going to work with you. That is literally what it means. So there's a misconception that Alex has that that the only people we were targeting are, for instance, the people living on less than $1. Yes, we are targeting them. We have been targeting them. We've brought them to the table. The reason we are talking about them today is because we introduced the wheelbarrow as a symbol of saying it is time that those people actually are brought to the table. But we are also saying that the person who sits behind the desk of the teller, the banker, that person needs to be involved in decision making. That's the reason why
I see Alex planning to respond.
No, he's not going to respond. He has already told us a lot of things. That's the reason why you see our party leader meeting, William Ruto, meeting with different constituencies of people. The other day we saw he was with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and he was basically trying to understand what are the pain points, how are we going to work together. We saw him meeting with the teachers again and the people with disability. We've seen him meeting with different constituencies of people, because the understanding is, yes, we will campaign regionally, nationally, but we are also going to focus on what is within our manifesto, which, by the way, we have not launched. That is the one correct thing that Alex has said. We are launching it next week. And it focuses on issues in different industries, because for us, this election is about the economy. It's not about constitutional reforms. That is why we are not meeting, let me say, people who are focused on making amendments and sitting down with MPs. It's about the economy. That's why we are talking to different people who actually want pesa mfukoni, and we are like, how are we going to change and turn this thing around?
And some of those people who want pesa mfukoni are the youth, and this conversation has steered clear of the fact that there's been disinterest or complacency
there has been
on the part of the youth. Yeah. They have not registered to vote, and yet, even as we talk about a shift, you have, Alex, ignored the fact that there is a significant percentage here amongst the youth that is not going to be voting coming this election because the numbers have dropped. They have not registered to vote. How do you see this playing out, Joseph?
Before I answer your question, let me say something and disagree with my brother Alex. That, yes, this election is about issues. And the people of the Mulembe Nation, or specifically the Western Kenya people, are talking about the issue. And the issue that the people of Mulembe have been talking about is about the economy. And specifically, like the gentleman called the governor for Kakamega, or Wycliffe Oparanya, he was given a mandate by the president to chair a task force that was going to address the issue that the sugar industry was facing in the Mulembe Nation. Up to today, Governor Wycliffe Oparanya has not answered or has not given the people of Mulembe Nation a clear direction on what was the mandate of the task force and how and what is the conclusion or the solution to solve the issues to do with the sugarcane. Those are the issues that are affecting the people of Mulembe. And the people of Mulembe have been also categorical that in whichever camp they are going to be, they must see what is in for them. And clearly, the Mulembe Nation has been conned for several years to do with matters to do with the politics. And this year, they have said categorically that they are going to support a presidential candidate who is open and who is ready to discuss and engage with them. And that is none other than the Deputy President, William Ruto. He has gone through all the five counties in Western Kenya, through the Regional Economic Forum, where the people are raising issues and giving way forward. It's not about leaders, because for so many years in this country, we have been doing politics in where we sit in Nairobi, we draft manifestos, and we go and tell Kenyans, these are the manifesto. The manifestos that has been formulated by university lecturers. And that's why even as we are still asking for where is the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, because for them, they thought they know much about Kenya without involving Kenyans. But the Kenya Kwanza manifesto is being drafted and is being taken care of by the people themselves, because it is going to be a culmination on 30th about the 47 economic forums that we have been having in all the 47 counties. It's going to be a culmination of all the charters that our principals have signed with all the different sectors, the women, the teachers, the manufacturer sector. So it's something that if we are to go by the issues, these issues is just that Kenyans want to be involved. You cannot come and tell Kenyans you want to build for them an airstrip. And in real sense, if you do public participation, the real concern of those Kenyans in that place is about access to healthcare, it's about water, it's about roads, it's about education. So how do you do that And this is what has changed in this election and has thrown so many people off balance, politicians, political analysts, and everybody on board.
So for you, the issues play a major factor. And let's look at the latest findings by the IEBC, which show that the number of young Kenyans registered for the August elections has dropped since the last poll 5 years ago. The latest findings by the IEBC show that the number of young Kenyans registered for the August elections has dropped since the last poll 5 years ago. And let's look at the numbers. The number of youth aged 18 to 34 years old registered to vote in 2022 stands at 39.84%. This is a decline of 5.27% against the year 2017. Further analysis of youth enrollment showing that the number of registered female youth voters has declined by 7.75% in the period 2017 to 2022, while male youth enrollment has declined by 2.89%. So the females that have registered to vote, that is when we look at the youth, are less than the male, and by a huge margin. So should we assume that the youth are complacent about this election? And if so, if not, rather, why? And let's just look at issues around why these numbers, why the disinterest, and when the youth shun a process such as voter registration, what does this mean? I'll start with you, Gloria.
I think, first of all, when we were doing the new registration, and that's why we were getting what we were calling the virgin voters, that whole process was done so terribly. So it was, it had nothing to do with the youth, and yet those are the people who we are targeting as the new registered voters. The manner with which IEBC actually handled and even did civic education in terms of like sensitizing the electorate why you should go and register yourself, there will not be another chance to be registered and things like that. It was done very poorly. I think issues to do with youth have to be intentionally, thought about. And you actually have to bring youth to the table. For instance, when IEBC decided that we are going out, we are going to target the virgin voters, we are going to bring them on board, they didn't come up with new ideas on how we are going to actually get them from wherever it is they are, their colleges or universities, and get them to register. What they did is they put their conventional desks outside the school gates, and they were like, we're having a drive, go and register yourself. So as a youth in 2022 who barely even probably walks the road because we are taking Uber, Bolt or whatever, or we are on a boda, at what point am I going to actually get motivated or even see, oh, okay, there's a desk over there, let me go register? I mean, it had nothing to do with the youth at that point. For instance, if they were going to say we are targeting the virgin voters who probably didn't register the last 3 years, and the new ones who have just turned 18, and they say these guys are on TikTok. I've said this before on this station, and they decided let's have like some sensitization on TikTok, or let's reach them out maybe in their concerts. Let's use influencers who they follow. If there was an intentional approach to get them to register, that would have raised those numbers. Now, for the other youth who probably are I'm not talking not 18 to 20, but let me say now between 25 and 35. We just came out of a COVID pandemic. That constituency of people 25 to 35, especially the female 25 to 35 voter, most of them are young mothers. Most of them have been dealing with the economic issues since COVID. Most of them were actually more focused on surviving the day than going to go get registered. Most of them at that point actually were figuring out, even, where is that Kazim Tani? We go and get our 200. So they could have tied in, you need to understand those kind of, it's like saying we're going to have a public engagement, or what we call public approach to something, and then you have it between between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m. in the villages, in the grassroots. Women won't turn up because women are in the shambas, women are that's when they're actually doing their day-to-day activities. And that's how we end up not having women participating in those public engagements. So it's the same thing with the youth. They were not targeted in terms of registering. There was nothing that was appealing to them for them to say, Leo, naenda kuregister because, for instance, for a simple thing, I'm going to vote for my youth representative. We have a women representative, but we don't have, for instance, if we had a youth representative seat, you know,
Yeah.
that would have gotten a lot of youth that was restricted to, you know, that if you're vying, you have to vie and finish the term within the age bracket of the youth. Then a lot of youth, because of that particularly, would go out and register to vote.
Is there enough incentive when you look at the Kenya Kwanza side, Alex, and the Azimio side? Is there enough incentive for the youth to register to vote? Was there enough incentive when you look at both sides of the political divide and what the youth can relate to when they look there, when they look at the issues that are being raised as well? Was there enough incentive? Has there been enough incentive previously? And when we look at the numbers that we're seeing right now, why have they shunned this process?
Lillian, before I respond to that, just give me a latitude of a minute so that I can respond to some of the issues that have been raised. And you also, I think you're cognizant that the lady and gentleman, they subscribe to the Tanga Tanga manifesto. So I'm the only one probably on this other side.
We are members of
we might let
you need to make it quick because we cannot keep going back to those issues.
Just a minute.
Alex,
we might let Joseph get away with intellectual treason, which I think it will be not okay, because he has even quoted that, you know, we have university lecturers who are experts in their various fields who sit down and come up with a manifesto. And I'll tell him, for instance, a simple issue in Western, you don't have to talk about Mama Mboga. The people in Western want to talk about issues of manufacturing. They just want to know how Mumia's sugar can work. They just want to know how Nzoia sugar can work. And once you have fixed Mumia's and you have fixed Nzoia, the issues of healthcare, they know very well that they can take care of themselves. The issues of water, the issues of access to education, they can as well.
But yeah, he did talk about the trickle-down effect, empowering the people economically, and I think that is what I picked from their issue
starts and ends with Mama Mboga. And even from where Gloria comes from, you cannot go to Kisii and talk about Mama Mboga. If you go to Kisii and hope this is not an indication of where the manifesto should be headed, you talk about a common Kisii person would want to know that the next time I'm going, you know, to pick my tea, what are the kind of bonuses that I'm going to get from my tea? They would want to know how the subsidies, how government is coming in to ensure that fertilizer has been subsidized so that it can be affordable to them, and how they can also be able to market whatever they are producing. Back to your question, I'm one of those people who was, let's say, was very involved at the aspect of voter registration when IEBC was doing that. And I'm on record calling out IEBC for, you know, being complacent and frivolous in terms of how they were addressing voter registration. You remember at that point, when at the start of the first mass voter registration, they had indicated that they were targeting about 7 million registered voters. And they ended up not registering more than 2 million, which is basically less than 25% of the target. And I'm on record also calling IEBC that if we are talking academically, then that is a D. And when you get a D, you're not even supposed to be funded anywhere. And you realize that voter registration itself had a budget. We tried holding meetings with IEBC so that they can also listen to us, divide of our political persuasions, just as youth actors, for them to realize that they are changing trends with the Kenyan young person. For instance, we even asked them to partner with media. There is a program that is very, very common and very popular in Citizen. We have 10 over 10. And you'd realize that youth across the country, when 10 over 10 is on air, all the young people across this country, whether in Marsabit or in Migori or where Joe comes from in Busia, all of them will be tuned in. Why don't you partner with the production of such and ensure that, you know, there is a swagarific message about voting that will endear young people to rise up, to get out from their homes and go and register as voters. We have celebrities. How come they did not talk about social influencers just to plug them into the aspect of voter registration? So it lies squarely with IEBC. I don't think there is anyone else to take blame apart from IEBC. We did not even have roadshows moving around and telling young people to come and vote. If, for instance, you go to Trans-Nzoia where you come from and you just get a registration clerk, you give him a desk and you put him at the gate of a primary school, and yet you expect young people to show up and register without you having a message, without you even telling them that the election that is coming, the decisions that they are going to make, the person who they are going to vote for is going to impact their lives, then you have completely lost it. And I think that's where Chebukati lost this country.
Okay, you feel that the IEBC failed, but I asked you about incentive. When you look at both sides of the political divide, or you look at our representatives, you know, politically, recycling of politicians and octogenarians is a catalyst of youth voter apathy. This is Sawekipia, one of our youthful viewers, who feels that and others also feel that there's trust issues everywhere, from government institutions to relationships. But about incentive, a lot of our viewers this morning feeling that there is absolutely none whatsoever. And like Gloria said, there's really nothing to look forward to as regards the next season of leadership, because these people, or these youthful persons, have nobody to relate to.
Mm-hmm. I won't beat around the bush. I'd take the bull by its horns. There's a Kenya Youth Report that was done by the Aga Khan University in 2021. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the Kenya Youth Report, it says that 90% of the young people across the country, they think that it's important to turn up and vote. But 70% of them say that they don't think that they can make a change by voting. Mm-hmm. What was sad in that report is that 65% say that they can only vote if they have been bribed. Mm-hmm. So you cannot say that you would delink even the voting from the registration. Probably even 65% of the young people said that if I do not get an incentive, or if I do not get a bribe from a politician, I'm not going to register to vote. And I think some of our politicians had those cases across political divide. You'd say that if I'm an aspirant, I need to give you fare, I need to facilitate you to go to the registration center for you to register to vote. And those are the issues that are affecting Kenyans. And I think it's high time that we are called as a generation to step away from our political subscription and just handle issues as the young people. Going forward, I think the aspect of national ethos, what do we stand for as Kenyans? Because if we have 65 or let's say 75% of our population below the age of 35, and on the registered voters, we only have something less than 50% who have registered to vote. What does it imply even in the elections that we are going to have in 2022? What does it imply in the elections that we are going to have in 2032? Probably by the time we are getting to 2027 and 2032, probably the number of voters who are youth, who are 35 and below, might even shrink to 20%. So there's that urge, there's that call that government also, the government that is coming, has to be responsive, has to be very structured and deliberate on addressing the issues that are pertinent to the young people, away from rhetoric, away from political gerrymandering. And
yet, another comment that I had picked earlier, how many times have politicians repeated to the youth that voting will change things, only for that promise to be promptly broken and translate into their hollow realities and futures? Gloria, Joseph, your response to this, that it is a broken record, it is a vicious cycle, and therefore, why bother? Why register?
I like what Matare said, that the government that is coming has to be responsive. That's for sure, because the government that we have now is not responsive to the youth. And I can tell you, he was part of the BBI, which had nothing to do with the youth. And you know, that whole process of BBI, which was really pushing the electorate into a certain corner, also was a reason why we don't have the youth registered. The 14-member task force was old people. Actually, the average age was like 58. They had 70-year-olds in the 14-member task force. That same group of people is the same group of people that is fronting Raila Odinga, who, by the way, is how old? 70? Thank you. Whose running mate is how old? Thank you. Who, the people around him, Charity Ngilu and the likes, are how old? Again, the average age of these people comes to around 58, 60. How are those people going to address youth matters? How are those people going to appeal to the youth? Even if I just sit somewhere and I'm like, I don't even want to hear what you're promising me, and I look at you, I'm like, watu hawezi kuangalia maneno yangu. And you know, when you look at their manifesto and the things that they're promising the youth, this is a replica of what they were trying to push on BBI, and there was nothing in there for the youth. In fact, I was one of the people propagating that the youth should not be involved in anything to do with Building Bridges initiative, because it had nothing for them. So I would say this, for this election, and I am very open about this, we want to understand, even if not just appointments or pushing for representation of the youth, or pushing for issues that directly affect the youth, such as this Pesa Mfukoni or what, the youth need to understand that if someone, first of all, does not resonate with your challenges, they cannot begin to even sit down with you. I want to challenge Alex to tell me, amongst their principles, or even just forefront runners, or even just the people we see in Azimio team, which Which youth other than him? He is the one who spoke in BBI, and that's the only role they gave him since. I have not seen Alex in any other forum. I have not seen him at the forefront of the launch of the manifesto. I did not even see him when they were trying to...
So you feel that there's no inclusivity in decision-making process?
There is absolutely. I'm not trying to say that Kenya Kwanza is the angel, but I'm trying to tell you that even the attempts of bringing the youth to the table, they are not there in Azimio. They are not there.
Are they there on the other side?
Absolutely. I'm sitting here as a youth policy analyst, as a youth advocate, and you can, truth be told, and go and look everywhere. In terms of economic forums, in terms of presidential national campaign platform, in terms of communication, in terms of even decision-making on how the party, which direction it's going, go and see where my party leader has placed me. And I am telling you, these are just like basic. Joe Halende here is sitting. Ask him the roles that he plays. Forget even about us who are in studio. Look at just the outfit that you have in terms of Kenya Kwanza. Even the principles of Kenya Kwanza. Look at their ages, interrogate how they relate with the youth, and then look at the principles of Azimio. And when I'm specifically just focusing this on the issue of the youth representation and the intentional approach on dealing with their issues. So for me, I would say yes, the government that is coming in has to be responsive. That government, which is Kenya Kwanza, is already responsive towards the youth, even within the process of elections. And I'll tell you this for a fact. When we're talking about even just representation, when Azimio went out and gave their manifesto, and named their running mate, they also named 6 positions of ministers that they are going to give. Which youth was there? None. Which other woman was there? None. So when you even look at how they are intending to have representation of their cabinet, of their appointive seats, of their, even within National Assembly and the Senate, there is nothing there for the youth. And if I'm going to now address the electorate out there, the youth that are out there, without even lying, without trying to convince you, Ruto anakuangalia nini, just look at the semantics, look at the outfits, look at the approach, look at the intention, and you will be clear that the only space the youth have is within the Kenya Kwanza Alliance. Yeah.
So, in terms of the IEBC's announcement on Monday, they're pointing to the low numbers. They're pointing the low numbers, or rather the apathy towards a disenchanted youth, and they're disenchanted by economic hardship and widespread corruption. So the little appetite they're showing is basically coming from issues such as hard economical times, lack of jobs. Clearly, your message is not reaching home because a lot of talk has been put out there in terms of economic empowerment, but still the youth feel that there's a lot of disillusionment, over a political elite that is seen as inept and corrupt, and that these are election pledges and promises that never come to fruition.
I want to approach this issue from a total different angle, but to go into agreement with what Alex has said. IEBC clearly gave us a report or an update of how voter registration was ongoing. And they raised an alarm that the youth are not interested with the exercise. But the question or the elephant in the room is, did IEBC put measures to see how youths are brought on board? And the first measure that Alex has raised is about civic education. IEBC was supposed to go head-on and address this issue and try to inform the young people using different channels like what Gloria has been saying, TikTok, Facebook, and what have you, to try and bring the youths on board. That was a failure on the side of IEBC. Going forward, IEBC left this exercise to the different aspirants or political players in the field. So politicians were supposed to find a way on how to mobilize the young people to come and register. I'm a candidate in this election, and clearly try you as an aspirant or as a candidate to go and mobilize the young people to come and vote. It's going to be too expensive for you. You rather actually go out there, try to educate the young people, but when you want to involve yourself with that matter, you'll find it's expensive and it's costly. So most of the politicians did not also do their work. Now, going forward and addressing the issue to do with the youth as a young person in this country. One of the leading economists in the US called Dambisa Moyo wrote a book about the age of chaos and raised a critical issues that young people across the world are disenfranchised and are not interested with anything to do with system, whether government or church. So how do we address this issue in this country? We really need to involve the young people in this politics and decision making, and tell Kenyans that if you go on Facebook, if you go on Twitter, you'll find young people lamenting daily on the cost of living. You'll find young people lamenting daily on the opportunities in this country and creation of jobs. But where it matters the most is not on Facebook or on Twitter hashtags. It is on the voting day. We have seen the Azimio manifesto, the Azimio agenda, their presidential candidate trying to move around. We have seen the Kenya Kwanza candidate and the agenda. Now it is that crucial time where the young people must come out and vote. And clearly, one thing I want to ask my brother Alex, to advise their presidential candidate, whenever they go, let it not be about Muzalendo and Hello Kenyans. Let them put something concrete forward for the young people.
And waliopigania tumetoka history.
Those things no longer, they are not catchy to the young people.
They're not.
The young people in this country want hope and opportunity.
And yet that boat has sailed, Joe. We're talking about youth that have not registered to vote. And I'm just bringing you back to whether there's likely to be a shift. These numbers, what do they translate to on the ballot come election date? The fact that youth are not going to be showing up at those polling stations to vote, and what that thereby means or translates to in terms of the numbers. We've been talking about battlegrounds, we've been talking about strongholds, but now that the youth are not turning up in numbers, what does that translate to when we look at the dailies today?
When you're raising that issue, I saw Alex smiling. Do you know why Alex was smiling? Alex was smiling that when you said that the young people are not in our register and they are not going to vote come August. First of all, I'm actually not in agreement with those statistics from IEBC. First issue. Because in 2017, young people, if you look at the register of 2017, clearly, if the young people in 2017 could have decided to vote for one presidential candidate, he could have managed to score 50+1. Come to 2022, we are being told that there was a new registration of new voters. But the new registration of new voter, even the young people cannot reach even 50% of that. It's actually 39. So there's actually something wrong with those statistics.
Let me just run that by our viewers again, just to show you the latest findings by the IEBC. I'm running those numbers by you again. The latest findings by the IEBC show that the number of young Kenyans registered to vote there's been a decline by 7.75% in the period 2017 to 2022. No, sorry, let me just take that again. I've mixed up those numbers. The latest findings by the IEBC show that the number of young Kenyans registered for the August elections has dropped since the last poll 5 years ago. So we're in agreement about that. Now, when we look at the age group between 18 to 34 years old, the persons registered to vote stands at 39.84%. And that is a decline of 5.27% against 2017. So we'll continue from where you are, and I'll have Alex respond to the fact that you have issues with the integrity of those numbers and whether they are in fact factual. But those are the numbers that we're working with as of now, and those are the numbers that the IEBC has given us, and therefore we're working with those numbers. And
I want to throw a question to IEBC and the people behind that narrative, because in 2013 we were given a narrative about tyranny of numbers. And that's how that narrative started. In 2022, we are having another narrative that the youth cannot even manage to reach 50%. And yet in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, we are being told that the young people are around 60 to 70% of our total population. So looking to try and take that to the voting register, you should be expecting something like even if we are...
And yet you're implying that the issue is in the numbers, but not in their interest, because, yes, the population, the numbers are there, but the issue is the disinterest and the fact that they did not actually register.
I think maybe, can I just jump in here for a minute? I think what Joe is saying is that actually we need to interrogate these numbers.
Yes.
And it's not 60%. According to the last census, it's 75%. The youth form 75% of the population of this country. So when IEBC comes and says that we have only 39.8% registered as youth, then of course for sure they are also saying there's a decline in the number of registered youth voters. But what we need to interrogate is from the percentages. I think that we need to interrogate. And I think this is one of the reasons why we are saying we see the numbers, you've put them out, but just print the voter register and let us have a look at it. Like when I go to my polling center, print the voter register so that I can see, and I'll tell you, half of these people have been imported from ABCD, or these people are dead, or this. Just print it so that we can see.
Going back to the issue of the hard copy with the IEBC,
the numbers,
that says won't happen. Sorry?
You close it, the numbers. And there's an illusion that my two colleagues have. When you talk about the statistics, and they don't seem to have the numbers at their fingertips. When you talk about the statistics by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, when you say that the youth are 75%, the 75% is anyone below the age of 35. So even that kid at 1 year old or 2 years old is categorized under that 75%. But if you look at the numbers of those ones who are eligible to register and vote between 18 and 35, they are less than 35%. And that's where they miss it. Just relax, you had your time.
No, still, we have to interrogate because we can't just be sitting here because
you had your time. So that is the information that I wanted to pass across, that you need to be cognizant of what report you're talking about, whether you will quote Kenya National Bureau of Statistics or Kenya National Housing Statistics Bureau. All those numbers are there, but they do not indicate to what they are trying to create. Secondly, Lillian, you have even quoted IEBC in itself. They are saying that the youth feel they are disenchanted, they are disenfranchised, they are disillusioned about the government. One, because of the high or rather tough economic situation in the country. We are talking about the price of common basic commodities, and it's not just in Kenya. I think it's a global phenomenon. If you go to Ghana, the same thing is happening. If you go to Nigeria, the same thing is happening.
If you go to Tanzania,
the UK, the same thing is happening. Secondly, before I'm interrupted, and I'll call for protection. I'll also call for your protection. Is that the second issue that the young people are raising? That is because of corruption. And you know the poster boy of corruption in Kenyan government. I don't even need to belabor the point. I'll leave it at that. So if corruption is impacting young people, they are saying that if that money that was meant to come and fund a TVET so that it can have equipment for me to get skills, and once I have the skills I can be employable, that money is siphoned by an individual, then I'm not going to stand up and vote. If that money that is supposed to ensure that I have, say, productive health at my proximity, probably in my village or in my county or in my ward, and that money ends up in the pocket of a politician, there is no motivation for me to wake up and vote. If you talk about even the issues that you're talking about, that there is no representation of the young people. Talk about BBI, and she mentioned about it. I was the center person when it came to the youth participation in BBI. One of the proposals that we presented was that there needs to be 30% youth representation in all government body and commissions. We are talking about voter registration. What is the average age of the commissions in IEBC? Will you take a proposal, my friend Joseph, about, you know, doing civic education in TikTok and present it before Chebukati, and you expect Chebukati to understand that? And those are some of the reasons that we said.
You might be surprised, he might actually understand
I really Chebukati is my kinsman and come from the same area. So I really doubt that you will understand. But what we were saying at that point is that we even need at least 2 commissioners to be young people, so that when it comes to issues that are pertinent to the young people, voter registration, government responsive to issues that affect the young people, at least there can be a youth champion who will also bridge the intergenerational gap and ensure that even the old generation can understand the issues and challenges that are facing the young people.
I want to rope you in, Gloria and Joseph, into the political intolerance that was witnessed yesterday at the Azimio rallies in Marsabit, where we saw, you know, both being in the same camp, but we saw an incident there where, police lobbed tear gas to quell the violence, and there was several interruptions that were witnessed there. And we do know that in a lot of these situations, it is the youth that actually engage in this violent acts. And, quote unquote, most of the times the hired goons, if at all they are hired, are the youth. Most of the time during the campaign rallies, the people that we see, the hired campaigners, the chief campaigners, are the youth as well. So even as we look at voter apathy in this season, as we go into the August polls, we're seeing political intolerance, and we're seeing pockets of this, and we're seeing the youth playing a part in this chaos. And yet this is not translating to what we're likely to see in the ballot come August in terms of the numbers that are going to show up to vote as regards the youth. Let's talk into political intolerance, because we do have a youthful viewership and audience this morning, and how the irony of this is playing itself out. Here you are as the youth, you're not registered to vote, you're not going to be voting, but then you are engaging in political intolerance. I'll start with you, Joseph.
I want to throw a question to the young people in this country. That one, young people cannot hide behind Facebook and Twitter accounts to protest. And when the right time comes where it matters the most, they are nowhere. Our young people need to register and need to come out and vote, so that the things that they are raising on Twitter and Facebook can be addressed. On issues to do with the political intolerance in this country, we have enough laws that are addressed to curb these issues. But the critical point here is that we need to tell politicians it is not a matter of life and death. And on this issue, specifically I come from Busia. And Busia has been also having the same issues that we saw in Jacaranda and yesterday played in Marsabit. Young people need to be told that politics is about addressing issues. It's about addressing economic growth. Politics is not about fighting. It's not about tribalism. It's not about handouts. So if young people think that they can come into politics and become instant millionaires, they are misplaced. That's why you find that the economic situation in this country has pressed young people. So whenever they see politicians, they see handouts and they see an avenue where they can do anything for a politician to get the money. No. It is about when, as a young person, when you see a politician, you really need to put that politician down to tell you and give you way forward how we can solve the economic situation in this country. It is not about the little money, the 1,000 bob or the 500 bob that you are given to go and heckle or to go and throw stones in those rallies. Then, to finalize on that point, in this country, historically, we have seen the people, and it's documented, the people who have been misusing the young people in this country. And we have seen the newcomers also who have joined politics recently, they are misusing the young people. Gentlemen and politicians who are seriously involved with this matter need to be cautioned. And there need to be a further step of where the rule of law comes in. The IEG, the DPP need to come in, and IEBC also, to come in and help us to sort out this mess. Because we cannot continue allowing these characters to move on, because it started in Busia and Kisumu, where the deputy president convoy was stoned. It moved to Jacaranda. Now we saw it yesterday in Marsabit. Elections are about in less than 45 days. So if we do not address that issue, it will critically affect even violence on the day of election will lead to voter apathy. So
it's happened on both sides of the political divide, Gloria. We have seen incidents on both sides. So your thoughts around this and the fact that the youth are being misused once again as we go towards this electoral process? First of all, I want to say that that narrative of the youth are the only ones involved in violence is so fake. Because in Jacaranda, who was actually stopping people from going to a rally? It was the police who actually paid, who were given instructions.
So we can't always just say like, oh, the youth are being used, the youth. In Jacaranda, at the end of the day, the people who actually caused the chaos are institutions that were being used by politicians, and we know which side of that divide. We've seen places where, and I come from Kisii County, and I can tell you when we had the by-elections last year, it was the police again who were being used. So, and you see for them, it is like you're putting them between a rock and a hard place, because if they have to secure their jobs. So when they are telling you orders from above, yes, they mean orders from the above. So I think, first of all, that narrative of only the youth being used to bring the violence during this election, no. We know that institutions are being used, and we know that state machinery is being applied, and we know for a fact that in Jacaranda, it was not young people that were throwing stones and doing all sorts of, it was paid people, and it was actually an institution that was being used. So sometimes also let's be fair to the youth. And I think that narrative of young people being used, young people going out to because of violence, I can tell you that a lot of sensitization has been done thanks to the civil society, thanks to, you know, community-based organizations, and, you know, those people who are actually doing the work of IEBC on sensitizing the electorate. And a lot of youth right now are very aware when they're told, kujeni nitawalipa kila mtu 200 muende na bodaboda or whatever. Nowadays, they are very aware that actually what I'm doing is wrong, and it is a choice that they're taking. Now, why would they be taking that choice to say, nitachukua 200 yako, I go to a rally and cause chaos? Because we bring it back to the economy. Pesa mfukoni. You know, we bring it back to the fact that if I am, my family is relying on me as the 18-year-old to bring something in the evening because literally the economy is so horrible, yes, at one point I might be compromised because I am literally trying to survive. So at the end of the day, we should stop blaming the youth. Really. We should stop blaming the youth, and we should start blaming the failed institutions. We should start blaming the failed government. We should start blaming the person who has the full authority and autonomy to turn this, you know, thing around and actually create proper economic empowerment for the youth. At the end of the day, we are not going to keep blaming the youth for doing what they need to do to survive. We need to start understanding that this election is about the economy. This election is about pesa mfukoni. This election is not only about constitutional amendments that do not translate to removing the youth from the streets and, you know, taking them out from where they're vulnerable. It's actually about saying, by the time I take office, we have that 75% of this population that are youth. I don't know what percentage of it is actually between the 18 to 34-year-old, but we need to put them to work. How are we going to put them to work?
Lydia.
So let me just say this. I personally, being a youth advocate, I personally being a person who has been in the trenches with those same youth who at one point was vulnerable enough to be compromised, I would say I blame it to the CEO of this country, who has completely ignored the youth, who has completely been, whether he has been digressed or whatever, but it is the fault of the president that we have so many idle youth out there. Uhuru Kenyatta has brought us to this place, and I blame it to him, and we stop blaming the youth for trying to survive.
The youth know better, according to Gloria. Do you agree?
I want to take a sharp right from the wrong that has been presented by Gloria. One is that this, I think, you know, is the elephant in the room, and is even the topic that we needed to have started with, about political intolerance and the youth being used as a tool to propagate political intolerance. And just to pick up from where Joe had left, if we face it, let's be realistic. Youth are the ones who are attending political rallies all over. They are the ones who are providing the numbers, are the ones who are being mobilized. If you talk about political violence, you'll get the old generation probably supervising or financing, but the people who are the tools, who will take a stone, who will take a weapon against the other, is basically a young person, whether it's in Mandera or in Busia or in Jacaranda and what have you. Secondly, we don't want to boil it down into specific cases, because political intolerance has been across the political divide. If you talk about Ruto in Busia, or in Kisumu, I'd also talk about Raila when his chopper was attacked and stoned, and actually his life was under threat. So I think as the young people, when we start having such kind of a discussion, we need to come out of our political attire and just embrace each other as the young people and address issues that are pertinent to the young people. Because if we are going to get to this election, and you've already witnessed the temperatures are rising, and we have youth who are being mobilized from one area, from point A to point B, to go and cause political intolerance, political aspirants know that they are the young people who are being, hired and given handouts and come out to shout. And yet we can sit in a national broadcaster and say that whatever source of income you are getting, as long as you have pesa mfukoni, even if you are being hired to go and abuse a politician or to cause political intolerance, but as long as you have pesa mfukoni, then we are embracing you. I think we are missing out the point. The message to the young people is that there will be this country after 9th of August that will still remain as Kenyans, that will still have our issues. The only thing that will be different is the kind of person that would have woken up and voted for. If we vote for a person that we think addresses and has the interest of the young people at heart, that is the only difference that is going to come. That if you are disillusioned, if you are unemployed, that if you have skills, you are competent enough, but you don't have a job, you don't have where you can wake up in the morning and go and seek for a better life. If you vote for that politician that you think will address that and create that factory next to where you're coming from, or ensure that there are better education institutions, or ensure that there are better employment opportunities in the police, in the military, in medical services and what have you, then that is the change that all of us should yearn for. And lastly, we should move away from violence, because violence is not going to help us. Where we are standing currently, I don't want to apportion blame. We are having a global financial inflation across board, and that is something we need to be cognizant about. And if there's something wrong that is going to happen in the election that we are going to have, we might not be able to recover even in 5 years. That if you are going to have post-election, or rather pre-election of post-election, then if you look at the numbers that even were presented by the Treasury in 2007, we lost about half of our budget in a time frame of less than 3 months. If you are going to have the same this time round, we might even lose the entire budget of 3 trillion in less than 2 months. What will that imply to that young person? That you won't have food on your table, you don't have money to pay your rent, you don't have money to cater for your medical health, and your life will be disillusioned and disenchanted. So we are encouraging the young people across political divide. Go to rallies if you want to, but don't go there to cheer or to jeer someone. If you do not accept, or if you do not resonate with the message that is being propagated, you have the right of moving away. You have a right of not attending that rally. You can stay in your house and make your own independent decision, and when the voting day comes, you show up at the polling station and cast your vote. What we are saying is that elections bila norma.
Right, elections bila norma. Let's take a look at your tweets this morning on DayBreak. We're going to be taking your feedback. Remember to tweet using @CitizenTV Kenya. The hashtag is DayBreak @Lilian_Muli, or you could SMS us using SMS number 22422. Let's take a look at your tweets. And here we go. IEBC must pick lessons and make corrections ASAP. Management of the voter register has had issues that should never be repeated because it pokes holes into their credibility. A voter register is the election itself, without which there is no election. Okay, Josh Ngoya, you're saying the decline in number of voters is due to lack of confidence in the IEBC. Most youths don't see their votes count in this election. Remy, you're saying IEBC is acting in violation of Section 44A of the Elections Act, which provides for provision of a complementary system of voter identification. Voting is a right, and IEBC has a duty to facilitate and not deny citizens the right to vote. Putting IEBC under siege few days to elections indicates both sides of the political divide won't accept poll results. And I wonder why now, yet they kept mum on these reforms after the 2017 elections and have been sleeping on the Krigler report. Digital voters register should be used alongside manual register. If one failed, another can be used. IEBC should be very keen to ensure that no name is left out of the register based on where an individual registered to vote. And voting is not purely about the interests of those voting, but for the entire populace. So voter apathy shall be addressed after bringing in responsible leadership alive to the needs and aspirations of those in protest. In 2013, 2017, we trusted young men with our country, and look at how we're suffering today. In 2002, 2013, we had an elderly president, and everybody can attest at how good our economy was. fact, leadership is not about age, it's about goodwill. Athanas Mavuti, you're saying as much as us youth participate, or rather appreciate those who fought for democracy in this country, that is in the past. Youth need someone who can immediately sort out the present issues of unemployment, high cost of living, and this is why we'll be voting on the 9th of August. Ogonda Jacob, if your message is good to the youth, how come you cannot convince them to register and vote? They could just be promises. And yeah, that's the last tweet. So thank you so much for tweeting, guys. Very, very, very good feedback we're getting from our viewers. We'll start with the voter register, and concerns lie in the fact that a lot of people, or rather not a lot of people, but most of the viewers that have tweeted are saying that there is indeed need. And I'll address this to you, Alex, since you're the one who feels, you know, no, rather to all of you. So, I mean, a lot of people feel that indeed there should be a complementary voter register, a hard copy, as opposed to what we're seeing the IEBC saying as regards the electronic voter register through the KIMS. And so just a lot of concern over the lack of a manual and hard copy voter register. I'll get your individual thoughts as we close. Let me begin with you, Alex.
I think it's not rocket science or quantum physics that technology has to be supported by a human interface. Mm-hmm. If you look at our traffic lights, yes, they are digital, but they will always have a policeman there, because sometimes it messes up. Technology, talk about Facebook, talk about Twitter. Sometimes we'll miss Twitter even for an hour or two. Talk about even M-Pesa, where some of us, you know, take it as a bank account. Sometimes, you know, it collapses and we cannot be able to operate. The same thing with IEBC. And I think for Chebukati needs to smell the coffee and just rise to the occasion. We cannot have an election in this country minus the complementary. Even the pieces of legislation that have been passed before, and you've seen the viewer indicating it aptly on Twitter, that the law in itself says that you need to have a complementary system, that you cannot rely only to a single system, that once you have a digital one, then you need to have a manual one, that if you have a manual one, then you need to have a digital one. Uh-huh. So those things run hand in hand. There must be that aspect of technology, but the human interface must always be there to ensure and guarantee that that voter who turns up at a polling station in Marsabit is not turned away just because technology fails to recognize that he has presented these fingerprints or biometrics for him to be identified as a voter. And
another tweet is saying, why the silence until now, you know, casting aspersions on the credibility of the IEBC in terms of the voter register. Why has the leadership of this country been quiet up to now, now that we are in the home stretch?
I think the first question we should ask is what happened to Huduma? You know, let's start from there, because when we are talking about digitizing this, digitizing that, we've seen the president, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday, giving the points of how they are going to move, and, you know, it was like facilities mapping and what, and they all revolved around the digital world. And but what happened to Huduma? You see, we didn't even trust the process of Huduma because we haven't seen the outcome of it. So why should we now trust that somehow, somewhere, there's going to be a digital voter register, and that's the only thing we are going to rely on? We still don't know what happened to Huduma. So, and we still are going to question that if I go to a polling center and I'm told, actually, your details are not here, your biometrics are not here, I won't trust that. I would like to see 3 or 4 days before that you print out the register and place them in the centers so that I can go and verify that, yeah, indeed, I'm voting here. And at least I'll have a day or two in case I'm not on the register to probably go to a, I don't know, customer care desk or whatever and figure it out. So I would say that we need to understand that the fear is not about the systems, analog or digital. It's about the institution. We are actually not trusting IEBC. And that is what is making us, you know, be a bit scared. Like, oh, let them have a backup, let them have this. If IEBC had pushed to build that trust with the electorate, I don't think we would have a problem if they told us that you can be sure that your details are digital and you will find yourself there. It's a trust issue that we need to address. And then finally, to the electorate, we are being too hard on the youth. And let me just say, we are really being too hard on the youth. The youth, just like any other Kenyan out here, is trying to survive. And Alex can say everything he wants to say and speak from a theory point of view. I'm in the NGO world, and I work with the youth every day. And myself, within our programs, sometimes I'm like, I'm trying to empower you. Just come and learn about entrepreneurship and whatever. And that person is telling you, I would come if I ate from 3 days ago. I haven't eaten anything. I can't be sitting in your classes and not trying to make money. So I'm just saying, as long as we have the youth vulnerable out there, as long as they do not have any source of income, as long as they're not economically empowered, then they're going to try to survive because they're human beings. Trying to survive, unfortunately, sometimes leads you to crime, the life of crime. That is the reality. So what we are saying, it needs to be approached from a level of whoever is going to take up this country has to understand that you need to get the youth out of those areas of desperation, give them jobs, empower them, so that by the time we're in the next election cycle, you are actually not addressing a desperate youth. You're addressing a youth that actually doesn't have time for rallies, so please send them an SMS or something like that. So stop being too hard on the youth. I blame it squarely on our president. Uhuru Kenyatta should have done something about the youth. And these youth commissions that they keep throwing at our face, they are throwing youth commissions, they are throwing theoretic things. Those things don't work. Call the youth to the table and have them make those decisions, and it is Uhuru Kenyatta's fault.
It is a new dawn, so we are moving forward and looking at a positive outlook. Joseph, on your end, in terms of the voter register, the IEBC by law has 7 days to announce the election, so they feel that they're within their right to say that there will be no physical voter register, that it will be digital all the way. They feel that they're in control of the areas that lack 3G connectivity, and that they are going to be having a seamless electoral process come August. What are your thoughts around the fact that a lot of people are calling for a complementary voter register?
Alex village mate needs to do the right thing. That is Chebukati needs to do the right thing and follow the law and follow the due process. Because even the viewer has just texted that under IEBC Act, Section 44A, talks about having a complementary supporting system to the main system, which is the digital one. So IEBC needs to just do the right thing and bring all the stakeholders on board. I like the idea that Chebukati is going to meet all the leading presidential candidates very soon. And actually, let it not just be a meeting, but let it be a meeting that cracks the way forward for us to have a free, fair, credible and verifiable election. That's what the country wants, and that's what everybody is praying for. So Chebukati needs to understand that by arriving to that end of having a free and fair election, we need to follow the due process. And the due process in our laws is about having the digital voter registration and having a complementary one that is actually an analog one or a hard copy one. So that's what Chebukati needs to do.
Last tweet that we're going to address, Gloria is a champion of the youth, and she said we need to be kind to the youth. But there is one of our viewers, or a couple of them, who feel that previously, when youthful leaders have been elected into office, they have failed. And Joseph, I know that you are an aspirant as well, but in terms of the delivery, in terms of the decision-making, a lot of the youth feel disenfranchised. They feel that those that they have put in office have failed them, and therefore they opt to vote for the quote-unquote dinosaurs, as they call them. I'll get your parting shots. We're closing. We're out of time completely.
First,
as we close.
However thirsty the Kenyan youth are, they should not even be tempted to take the poisonous drink that Kenya Kwanza is offering them. And secondly, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Kamala Harris, they are not young people. We haven't heard the youth from America complaining that they have been disenchanted or they are dissatisfied by the operations of government. It's about institutions. It's about that person that you elect in office who has your interest at heart, who can create employment, who can create better medical services, who can create better educational and training facilities for you that will ensure that you have skills and you can tap into the manufacturing and also propagate the economy of that country. So it's not about age. It's all about the goodwill, about the vision, about about the manifesto and about what someone stands for. If the elephant in the room in this country is about corruption, we need someone who will tackle corruption, who will save the 2 billion to ensure that more young people get employment, they get better medical services, they get better and quality education across board. And once that is guaranteed, you can be rest assured that as the young people of this country looking forward, probably the numbers will rise from what we are talking about 9 to even 20 million when we come to the elections of 2032 and going forward.
Gloria, I know you've been very exhaustive on this issue, and you've belabored the point on the youth, but in terms of the fact that the viewers feel that a lot of the youth that are in office or those that are in decision-making processes have really failed them as we close.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I can imagine the viewers thinking about the likes of Babu Owino, you know, then they feel, oh my God, no, we don't need a young leader. So I can understand where they're coming from, but they should think of people like Sakaja, for instance, who was nominated as a National Assembly MP and who grew to Senate. And
let's tear clear of names.
So,
let's tear clear of names.
I'm just trying to
the same young people are in campuses, they are pursuing degrees.
Listen,
what example are you showing them?
I'm just trying to say that I can imagine when they think of those who have been put at the forefront.
There are many others, of course. There are many others.
And I want to encourage them to think of those who have actually done something with that leadership. I want to encourage them to think of leaders. We had a president. Who's this president who actually from West Africa who was at 22 and anyway there are many.
We've never had a president in Africa 22 years. In fact, even African
he was actually assassinated. He was actually assassinated. I'll get the name and give you after this.
22 years we've never had that.
Let's proceed as we close, please.
And they share a birthday with William Ruto. So I'm going to tell you this: the youth out here should not have that negativity that atuwezani. There are actually many good examples of leaders who've been put in positions and have actually delivered, who are youth. So I think it's a matter of understanding that if you're ever going to, your issues are going to be addressed as a youth, you need to look at which camp actually resonates or is intentionally trying to address your issues. And for me, I would say, as much as maybe Alex does not agree with me, I understand when you're surrounded with old people, you tend to think that only old people can lead. But I'll tell you this, in Kenya Kwanza, we respect the youth. We have a lot of youthful leaders, me included, and we deliver on whatever tasks that we've been given. And I think that the youth should be given a chance. And let us stop being hard on the youth and always blaming them. Oh, the youth this, oh, the youth that. At the end of the day, the youth actually need an environment where they can thrive. They need to be given economic empowerment. And it is not their fault that they are trying to survive.
Joseph, leadership is not about age. It's about goodwill. That was a tweet that came our way this morning. Your thoughts?
I concur with the sentiment from the viewer that leadership is not about age, it's about the goodwill, it's about the passion, it's about the commitment and the sacrifice that the leader you are going to elect has for whatever the promise or the agenda he has. But to what my brother Alex has raised about Joe Biden today is telling the US that we cannot continue the trickle-down economic model. We need a bottom-up, middle-out economic model that can empower the people at the bottom of the pyramid and bring them on board at the middle class or have the middle class to budge out. So that's the current trend in the worldwide, where government and systems are going down to the people at the bottom. And the young people in this country, what they are yearning for, it's hope and opportunity. How do you give them hope and opportunity? It's through job creation, it's through about empowerment. And that's what the young people in this country want. The young people in this country do not want those appointments in government. The young people are so creative in this country. The creative industry, the talent.
Are you saying they don't want to be involved in decision making? When you say they don't want those appointments,
we want to be on the decision making. But decision making table, it cannot be all of us. It's about a representative. But the majority of the young people want opportunity.
Right. We thank you so much for your time this morning. I've been with Alex Matere. He's a youth leader in studio this morning. I've also been with Gloria Oroba, public policy analyst, as well as Joseph Halende. He is an advocate. Many thanks for being with us this morning. Let's continue the conversation on social media at DayBreak, at Citizen TV, Kenya at Lilian_Muli. And of course, you can continue sending us your SMSs right here on Citizen TV. The SMS number is 222. 2422. Many thanks for watching. Keep it Citizen TV. My name is Lillian Muli. We're back with more.